Lisa Carter wiped the sweat from her forehead as she climbed out of the engine room. Her first week aboard the Star Runner had been tough. The old cargo ship needed constant repairs, and Captain Jake Morrison expected his crew to work hard. But Lisa didn't mind. She had dreamed of working on a starship since she was a little girl. The dinner bell rang through the ship's speakers. Lisa quickly washed her hands and headed to the main dining room. She was hungry after spending 6 hours fixing the water. Recycler. When she walked into the dining room, she saw the usual scene. Captain Morrison sat at the head of the long metal table. His second-in-command, Maria Santos, sat to his right. Pete Williams, the communications officer, was already digging into his food. The ship's doctor, Ben Clark, was telling a funny story about his last assignment. Navigator Amy Johnson was laughing at something cook Danny Martinez had said. Lisa took her usual seat near the middle of the table, but something had been bothering her all week. There were 7 people eating dinner, but the table had 8 chairs. One chair always stayed empty. It was pulled up to the table like someone was supposed to sit there, but no one ever did. "Captain," Lisa said, cutting into her synthetic beef, "why do we keep that empty chair? Is someone missing?" The room went quiet. Everyone stopped eating. Pete looked at Maria. Maria looked at the captain. Ben cleared his throat and looked down at his plate. "It's tradition," Captain Morrison said after a long pause. "Every human ship keeps an empty seat." "But why?" Lisa asked. She had always been curious about everything. Her mother used to say she asked too many questions. "It's to honor those we lost," Amy said quietly. "Lost how?" Lisa pressed. "In an accident?" The captain stood up. "Finish your dinner," he said. "We have work to do." After dinner, Lisa helped Danny clean the dishes. The old cook had gray hair and kind eyes. He had been working on starships for 30 years. "Danny," Lisa said as she dried a plate, "what's the real story about that empty chair?" Danny looked around to make sure no one was listening. "It started after first contact," he whispered. "Every human ship has done it since then, but the reason—" He shook his head. "That's classified at the highest levels." "Classified? Why would a dinner tradition be classified?" "Because it's not just tradition, girl. It's something more important than that." The next day, Lisa was working on the air filters when the ship docked at Kepler Station. She had never been to such a big space station before. Ships from dozens of different worlds were docked there. She saw the elegant vessels of the Alteri, with their curved hulls that looked like works of art. The Zephyrian ships were massive and built like floating cities. But what caught her attention were the human ships. There was a military cruiser called the Freedom, a research vessel named Discovery, and several cargo ships like theirs. Lisa decided to take a walk during her break. She found a viewing deck that looked out over the docking bays. Through the windows of the other human ships, she could see their dining areas. Every single one had the same thing. 8 chairs around tables meant for 7 people. Or 10 chairs for 9 people. Always one empty seat. Curious sight, isn't it? Lisa turned around. A tall alien with blue skin and 4 arms was standing behind her. She recognized him as a Zephyrian trader. "You mean the empty chairs?" Lisa asked. "Your species has done this for over a century," the alien said. His voice was deep and musical. "We all know about it, but none of us understand why. You don't know the reason either." The alien's large eyes looked sad. "We know it started after the Brooks incident, but your people never speak of it openly." "The Brooks incident? You truly don't know?" The alien seemed surprised. "Captain Alan Brooks and the New Horizon. It happened before your species officially joined the Galactic Federation. Something about a great sacrifice." Before Lisa could ask more questions, the alien walked away. She stood there staring out at the ships, her mind racing with new questions. That night at dinner, Lisa tried again. "I met a Zephyrian today," she said. "He mentioned something called the Brooks incident." The entire table went silent. Captain Morrison's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. Maria's face went pale. "Where did you hear that name?" Ben asked sharply. The alien traitor. He said Captain Brooks made some kind of sacrifice. What happened to him? Lisa, Captain Morrison said firmly. Some things are better left alone. But why? If he was a hero, why don't we talk about him? Pete Williams looked nervous. Because talking about it brings up other things. Things the government doesn't want people to know. What kind of things? The real reason we joined the Federation, Amy said quietly. The real reason we became their defenders. Amy, the captain warned. She has a right to know, Amy continued. We all carry the responsibility. We all sit at tables with empty chairs. Captain, Morrison stood up again. This conversation is over. After everyone left, Lisa sat alone at the table. She stared at the empty chair and wondered who Captain Brooks had been. What had he done that was so important it changed everything for humanity? And why was it such a secret? She made a decision. She was going to find out the truth about the empty chair, about Captain Brooks, about what really happened when humanity first met the aliens. Lisa didn't know it yet, but she was about to discover a secret that would change how she saw her own species forever. Lisa couldn't sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the empty chair. She kept thinking about Captain Brooks and what the Zephyrian traitor had said. By morning, she had made up her mind. She was going to find out what really happened. After breakfast, Lisa found Pete Williams in the communications room. He was checking messages from Earth Command and updating their flight path to the next delivery point. Pete, Lisa said, closing the door behind her. I need your help. Pete looked up from his screen. If this is about last night, Lisa, you should drop it. I can't. Something big happened with Captain Brooks and everyone is hiding it. Don't you want to know the truth? Pete was quiet for a long moment. Then he sighed. I've always wondered about it too. When I was in training, one of my instructors mentioned the Brooks Protocol, but when I asked about it, he went pale and changed the subject. The Brooks Protocol? That's what he called it. Some kind of rule or procedure named after Captain Brooks. Lisa sat down next to Pete. Can you help me search the ship's database? Maybe there are old records we can find. Pete hesitated. If the captain finds out we're digging into classified material, he'll throw us off the ship at the next port. Then we'll be careful. Pete looked at Lisa's determined face and nodded. Okay. But we do this during my night shift when everyone else is asleep. That evening, Lisa pretended to go to bed early. At midnight, she snuck back to the communications room. Pete was already there, his fingers flying over the keyboard. I've been searching for hours, Pete said. Most of the records about First Contact are public, but anything about Captain Brooks or the New Horizon is either missing or marked classified. What about ship records? Maybe other vessels from that time? Pete pulled up another screen. I found something interesting. Look at this maintenance log from the battleship Defender. It's from 127 years ago, right around First Contact. Lisa read over his shoulder. The log mentioned emergency repairs after something called the Void Incident. It talked about quantum radiation damage and crew trauma counseling. Void Incident? Lisa said. What's that supposed to mean? I don't know. But look at the date. It's exactly 6 months before the official First Contact ceremony. They kept searching. Pete found fragments of old personnel files. There were references to Project Guardian and deep space reconnaissance missions. One file mentioned that the New Horizon was equipped with experimental weapons that were never used in normal service. Experimental weapons? Lisa said. Why would an exploration ship have weapons, unless it wasn't really just exploring? A soft alarm chimed on Pete's console. Incoming message, he said. It's a distress call. Pete opened the channel. A panicked voice filled the room, speaking in the clicking language of the Zephyrians. Pete quickly activated the translator. This is Merchant Vessel Tradewind. We are under attack by raiders. Our engines are damaged. Please, anyone who can hear this, we need help. Pete immediately activated the ship's alert system. Within minutes, Captain Morrison was on the bridge in his pajamas. The crew quickly assembled at their stations. How far away are they? Morrison asked. 2 hours at maximum speed, Amy reported from the navigation station. Are we armed well enough to handle raiders? Maria asked. The Star Runner has basic defensive weapons, Morrison said. But we're a cargo ship, not a warship. Captain, Ben said over the intercom from the medical bay. I'm preparing for casualties. Morrison made his decision. Set course for the trade wind, full speed. Lisa and Pete watched from the communications room as the Star Runner changed direction. Through the viewports, Lisa could see stars shifting as they turned toward the distress call. Why are we helping them? Lisa asked. We're just a cargo ship. Because that's what humans do, Pete said. We help when others are in trouble. 2 hours later, they found the trade wind. The Zephyrian merchant ship was badly damaged. 3 smaller raider ships were attacking it with energy weapons. The trade wind was trying to escape, but its engines were failing. Captain Morrison opened a channel to the raiders. This is Captain Morrison of the human vessel Star Runner. Break off your attack immediately. The raiders laughed over the radio. One human cargo ship? You should run away, little humans, before you get hurt. Morrison didn't run. Instead, he ordered Maria to target the lead raider ship. The Star Runner's weapons weren't powerful, but they were accurate. The first shot hit the raider's engine. The second shot disabled their weapons. The other 2 raider ships suddenly seemed less confident. They had expected an easy target, not a fight. When the Star Runner targeted the second ship, all 3 raiders decided to retreat. After the battle, the captain of the trade wind requested permission to come aboard. His name was Kethvar, and he was an old Zephyrian with scars on his blue face. You saved our lives, Kethvar said as he sat at their dinner table. We cannot repay such kindness. Lisa noticed that Kethvar kept looking at the empty chair. Finally, he pointed to it. You still honor him, Kethvar said quietly. Honor who? Morrison asked carefully. The one who saved us all. Captain Brooks. Your species still remembers his sacrifice even though we never properly thanked him. The room went completely silent. Lisa felt her heart beating faster. You knew Captain Brooks? She asked. Kethvar looked surprised. You do not know the story, but you keep the empty seat for him. Morrison stood up quickly. Captain Kethvar, perhaps you should rest. Your ship needs repairs. But Kethvar continued. My grandfather was there when it happened. When Captain Brooks chose to save billions of lives he had never met. When he made the choice that brought your species into our war. What war? Lisa asked before Morrison could stop her. Kethavar's large eyes grew sad. The war against the Void, Swarm. The war that nearly destroyed every civilization in the galaxy. The war that only ended because one human captain was willing to sacrifice everything. Lisa felt like the room was spinning. The Void Swarm. The war. Captain Brooks had died fighting some kind of galactic threat that almost destroyed everyone. Morrison quickly escorted Kethavar out of the dining room, but the damage was done. Lisa now knew that Captain Brooks hadn't just died in some accident. He had died saving the entire galaxy. The question was, what exactly had he done? Lisa couldn't get Kethavar's words out of her head. The Void Swarm. A war that almost destroyed every civilization in the galaxy. Captain Brooks had died to save billions of people he never met. But how? And why was it still a secret? She waited until the next night to meet Pete in the communications room again. This time she had a new plan. Pete, can you access alien communication networks? She asked. That's illegal without proper authorization, Pete said. But he was already turning to his console. What are you thinking? If human records are classified, maybe alien records aren't. Kethvar said his grandfather was there when it happened. Maybe the Zephyrians kept better records than we did. Pete's fingers moved over the keyboard. I can tap into some of the older Galactic Federation databases. The security on century-old files isn't as strong. They worked for hours. Most of the files they found were boring trade reports and diplomatic messages. But then Pete found something different. Lisa, look at this. It's a Zephyrian military report from 127 years ago. The report was written in formal language, but the translator made it readable. Lisa's eyes grew wide as she read. Fleet Admiral Zethmore reports total defeat at the Seventh Ring. Void Swarm adaptive shields have made all Federation weapons useless. Estimate 72 hours until Swarm reaches core worlds. Recommend immediate evacuation of all non-military vessels. The Seventh Ring, Pete said. That's way out in the outer rim. If the Void Swarm was there 127 years ago and heading for the core worlds, they would have passed right through human space. Lisa kept reading. Look at this part. Unknown human vessel made contact with survivors. Captain identified as Brooks, of the exploration ship New Horizon. Humans claim to possess untested weapon technology. Untested weapon technology, Pete repeated. Remember those maintenance logs we found? The New Horizon had experimental weapons. They kept searching and found more pieces of the puzzle. A Centauri report mentioned strange quantum readings from human space. An Alteri message talked about the human sacrifice that changed everything. A formal Federation document referred to Protocol 77 being established after the Brooks incident. Protocol 77, Lisa said. That must be the URSO, same as the Brooks Protocol you heard about. But the most important discovery came from an old personal log. It belonged to someone called Admiral Susan Hayes. The file was partially corrupted, but they could read most of it. Personal log, Admiral Hayes. Stardate 226015. The Federation Council has agreed to humanity's immediate membership, but the price is higher than anyone imagined. We are now the first line of defense against any future Void Swarm attacks. The Brooks Protocol ensures that every human ship remembers what we might be called upon to do. First line of defense, Pete said quietly. Is that why we help the trade wind? Is that why human ships always respond to distress calls? Lisa was about to answer when alarms started blaring throughout the ship. Red lights flashed in the corridors. Pete quickly switched to the main communication channel. Captain Morrison's voice came over the speakers. All hands to stations. We have received an emergency Federation broadcast. This is not a drill. Lisa and Pete ran to the bridge. The entire crew was there, their faces tense. On the main screen was a Federation emergency message. Attention all vessels, the message said. Long-range sensors have detected Void Swarm scouts in the outer rim. This is the first confirmed Void Swarm activity in 127 years. All Federation ships are ordered to report to their assigned defense positions immediately. Lisa felt ice in her stomach. The Void Swarm was back. Captain Morrison turned to his crew. Amy, set course for the Kepler defense line. Maria, charge all weapons and prepare for combat. Ben, get the medical bay ready for casualties. Captain, Lisa said, what about our cargo delivery? Morrison looked at her with tired eyes. The cargo doesn't matter now, Lisa. Nothing matters except stopping the swarm before they reach the inhabited worlds. As the Star Runner changed course toward the defense line, Lisa finally understood. Humanity hadn't joined the Galactic Federation as explorers or traders. They had joined as soldiers, as protectors, as the people willing to stand between the darkness and everyone else. Pete, she whispered. Now I know why we keep the empty chair. That night, despite the crisis, the crew still gathered for dinner. But this time, the mood was different. Everyone kept looking at the empty chair, but no one spoke about it. Finally, Captain Morrison broke the silence. Lisa, you wanted to know about Captain Brooks, about why we keep that chair empty. Lisa nodded. The truth is classified because it's not just history, it's a promise that when the time comes, one of us will be ready to make the same choice Brooks made. What choice? Lisa asked, though she was beginning to understand. To give up everything to save everyone else, Morrison said. That empty chair isn't just for Brooks, it's for whoever might not come back from the next mission. Maria spoke up. Every human ship keeps an empty chair because every human ship might need to make the ultimate sacrifice. That's what we signed up for when we became the Federation's defenders. Amy nodded. The chair reminds us that being human means being willing to die for people we've never met. Lisa looked around the table at her crewmates. These weren't just cargo haulers or space truckers. They were part of humanity's promise to protect the galaxy, They were inheritors of Captain Brooks's legacy. What exactly did Captain Brooks do? Lisa asked. Morrison was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Tomorrow when we reach the defense line, you'll meet other captains who know the full story. If we survive what's coming, maybe it's time for the next generation to learn the truth." Lisa stared at the empty chair and realized that very soon she might discover not just what Captain Brooks had done, but whether she and her crewmates were brave enough to do the same thing. Outside the ship, the stars looked different now. They weren't just points of light in the darkness. They were worlds full of people who were counting on humanity to protect them. The question was, would they be strong enough when the time came? The Star Runner reached the Kepler defense line 2 days later. Lisa had never seen so many ships in one place. Hundreds of human vessels floated in formation, from massive battleships to small patrol craft. Even cargo ships like theirs had been called to help. Captain Morrison was called to an emergency meeting aboard the command ship Liberty. When he returned, his face was grim. "Gather everyone in the dining room," he told Maria. It's time they heard the whole truth. The crew assembled, around their table. The empty chair seemed to loom larger than usual. Morrison sat down heavily and looked at each of them. "The Void Swarm Scouts aren't just exploring," he began. "They're testing our defenses. Admiral Carter believes the main swarm fleet is gathering somewhere beyond our sensor range. We might have weeks, or we might have days." "How many ships do they have?" Danny asked. "Unknown. But 127 years ago they had thousands, enough to destroy entire star systems." Lisa leaned forward. "Captain, you promised to tell me about Captain Brooks." Morrison nodded slowly. "I met with Admiral Carter and some of the older captains. They agreed it's time. But Lisa, once you know this story, you'll carry the same burden we all carry. B. Ready?" Morrison began to speak, his voice quiet but steady. 127 years ago, the Void Swarm appeared from beyond the galaxy's edge. They weren't like any enemy the Federation had ever faced. They were a hive mind, billions of creatures that shared one consciousness. Their ships could adapt to any weapon used against them. Pete interrupted. "That's why the Federation weapons were useless." "Exactly. Every time the Federation fleets attacked, the swarm learned and adapted. Their shields became stronger. Their weapons became deadlier. Within 6 months they had destroyed dozens of worlds and were heading for the core systems." Morrison paused and looked at the empty chair. That's when the New Horizon found the retreating Federation fleet. Captain Alan Brooks was on a deep, space exploration mission. His ship was small, with only 12 crew members, but it was equipped with humanity's newest technology. "The experimental weapons," Lisa said. "Quantum phase torpedoes. They had never been tested in real combat. Earth Command was still trying to figure out how they worked. But Brooks realized something important. The Void Swarm had never encountered quantum phase technology. They couldn't adapt to something they had never seen." Maria leaned back in her chair. "So Brooks decided to use the untested weapons?" "Not exactly." Morrison's voice grew heavy. "The quantum phase torpedoes weren't just weapons. They were prototypes for a new kind of engine. If they were overloaded and detonated, they would create a quantum cascade reaction." "What does that mean?" Danny asked. "It means a chain reaction that would spread through subspace. If Brooks could get close enough to the main swarm fleet and detonate his entire quantum core, the cascade would disrupt the swarm's hive-mind connection." Lisa felt cold. "But the ship would be destroyed." "Along with everyone on it," Morrison confirmed. Brooks knew it was a suicide mission. But he also knew it might be the only way to stop the swarm before they reached the core worlds. The room was silent except for the hum of the ship's engines. "Brooks didn't make the decision alone," Morrison continued. "He told his crew what he was planning. Every single person on the New Horizon voted to go through with it. 12 people chose to sacrifice their lives to save billions of strangers. Did it work?" Lisa asked, though she already knew the answer. "The quantum cascade destroyed over half the swarm fleet instantly, but more importantly, it severed the hive-mind connection. The remaining swarm ships couldn't coordinate their attacks. They scattered and fled back toward the galaxy's edge." Amy spoke up. "But it also revealed humanity's location to any surviving swarm units." Morrison nodded. The cascade created a quantum signature that pointed straight back to human space. Brooks had saved the galaxy, but he had also painted a target on Earth and all human colonies. That's why the Federation offered us immediate membership, Pete said. They needed us to be their first line of defense. The Federation was grateful, but they were also afraid, Morrison said. They had just seen 12 humans willingly die to save people they had never met. What kind of species does that? What kind of people choose to sacrifice everything for strangers? Lisa began to understand. So they made us the protectors. Every human ship became part of the defense network. Every human captain accepted the responsibility that came with Brooks' sacrifice. We became the ones who would stand between the darkness and the light. Morrison stood up and walked to the empty chair. He placed his hand on its back. This chair isn't just for Brooks and his crew. It's for any of us who might need to make the same choice. Every meal we look at this empty seat and remember that our lives might be the price of keeping others safe. The Brooks Protocol, Lisa whispered. Protocol 77, Morrison confirmed. If the Void Swarm ever returned in force, human ships would be expected to use any means necessary to stop them, even if it meant following Brooks's example. The ship's communication system chimed. Pete quickly answered it. All ships, this is Admiral Carter, came the voice from the speakers. Long-range sensors have detected the main swarm fleet. They're moving toward the defense line. Estimated arrival time is 18 hours. Morrison looked around the table at his crew. Now you know why we're here. Why every human ship answered the call. In 18 hours, some of us might need to make the same choice Brooks made. Lisa stared at the empty chair and realized that by tomorrow it might not be empty anymore. One of them might be gone, following in Brooks' footsteps. Are you ready for that? Morrison asked quietly. Lisa looked at her crewmates. Pete was scared but determined. Maria was checking her weapons. Ben was preparing his medical supplies. Amy was calculating battle formations. Danny was making sure everyone would have a good last meal. Yes, Lisa said. We're ready. Morrison smiled sadly. Then tomorrow, we'll find out what it really means to be human. The 18 hours passed too quickly. Lisa spent the time helping Pete upgrade their communication systems and working with Ben to prepare emergency medical supplies. No one talked much. Everyone knew what might be coming. When the Void Swarm fleet appeared on their sensors, Lisa felt her breath catch. There were hundreds of dark ships, each one larger than anything in the human fleet. They moved together like a school of deadly fish, perfectly coordinated by their hive mind. All ships, this is Admiral Carter, came the voice over the communication system. The swarm is approaching the outer defense line. Remember your training. Remember why we're here. Captain Morrison gathered his crew on the bridge. Through the main view screen, they could see the human fleet spreading out to meet the enemy. The big battleships moved to the front. Smaller ships like the Star Runner formed the second line. Captain, Amy reported from her navigation station. The lead swarm ships are firing on the Liberty. Lisa watched in horror as bright energy beams struck the command ship. The Liberty's shields held, but she could see they were weakening with each hit. Return fire, Morrison ordered. The human fleet opened fire with everything they had. Laser cannons, missile launchers, and plasma torpedoes all struck the swarm ships. For a moment, Lisa thought they might be winning. Then the swarm adapted. Captain, Maria called out. Their shields are changing. Our weapons aren't getting through anymore. It was happening just like 127 years ago. The Void Swarm was learning from every attack, making their defenses stronger. Within minutes, human weapons were useless against them. Admiral Carter to all ships, came the desperate voice over the radio. We need to fall back to the secondary defense line. The swarm is breaking through. But Lisa could see that falling back wouldn't help. The swarm was too strong, too adaptable. They would chase the human fleet all the way to Earth and destroy every world in their path. Unless someone did what Captain Brooks had done. Morrison must have been thinking the same thing. He activated a private channel to the other ship captains. This is Morrison of the Star Runner. The situation is clear. We need a Brooks Protocol activation. Negative, came Admiral Carter's voice. We still have other options. Admiral, look at your screens. The swarm is adapting faster than before. In 1 hour, they'll be through all our defenses. Lisa's hands were shaking. She knew what Morrison was suggesting. One of the human ships would have to fly directly into the swarm fleet and detonate their reactor core, just like Brooks had done with his quantum weapons. Captain, she said quietly, do our engines have enough power for a cascade reaction? Morrison looked at her with tired eyes. Lisa, you don't have to be part of this decision. Yes, I do. This is my ship too. These are my crewmates. Pete stepped forward. If we're voting, I vote yes. Better that 7 of us die than billions of innocent people. One by one, each crew. Members spoke up. Maria voted yes, Ben voted yes, Amy voted yes, Danny voted yes. Even though they were scared, even though they didn't want to die. They all chose to follow Brooks's example. Lisa was the last to vote. She looked around at her friends, her family. Then she looked at the empty chair in her mind and realized what it really meant. Yes, she said. I vote yes. Morrison activated the ship-wide communication system. Admiral Carter, this is the Star Runner. We are volunteering for Brooks protocol activation. Morrison, there has to be another way. There isn't, and you know it. We're the smallest ship in the fleet. We have the least to lose and the best chance of getting through their defenses. There was a long pause. Then Admiral Carter's voice came back, heavy with sadness. Confirmed, Star Runner. Brooks protocol is authorized. Thank you for your service. Morrison turned to Amy. Set course for the center of the swarm fleet. Maximum speed. As the Star Runner accelerated toward the enemy, Lisa felt strangely calm. She thought about her mother back on Earth, about the dreams she'd had of exploring the stars. She had gotten to explore them, just not in the way she had planned. Lisa, Morrison said, I need you in the engine room. When we reach the center of their formation, I need you to overload the reactor core. Lisa nodded and headed for the engine room. Behind her, she could hear Pete sending final messages to their families on Earth. Maria was targeting the biggest swarm ships. Ben was making sure their sacrifice would count for something. In the engine room, Lisa began the overload sequence. The reactor core hummed with increasing power. Warning lights flashed red all around her. Lisa, Morrison's voice came over the intercom. 30 seconds to target. Reactor overload ready, Captain. All crew to stations. This is it. Lisa put her hand on the final control switch. Through the engine room viewport, she could see the massive swarm ships surrounding them. Energy beams were striking their hull, but somehow they were still flying. Now, Lisa, she pulled the switch. The Star Runner exploded in a ball of white light. The explosion spread outward, consuming swarm ship after swarm ship. The cascade reaction severed the hive-mind connection, just as it had 127 years ago. The surviving swarm ships, cut off from their collective consciousness, panicked and fled. A week later, a new cargo ship called the New Dawn sat at Kepler Station. Captain Sarah Mitchell looked around her dining table at her crew of 6. There were 7 chairs, but one remained empty. Captain, asked her new engineer, a young man named Tom Bradley. Why do we keep that empty chair? Sarah smiled sadly. It's to honor those who came before us. Captain Brooks and his crew. Captain Morrison and his crew. All the humans who gave their lives to keep others safe. Will we ever have to do the same thing? Maybe. That's what the empty chair reminds us. That being human means being willing to sacrifice everything for people we've never met. Tom looked at the empty chair with new understanding. So it's not really empty. No, Sarah said. It's full of the promise that if the time comes, one of us will be ready to sit in it. The empty chair remained, as it always would, on every human ship that sailed among the stars. A reminder of sacrifice, of courage, and of what it truly meant to be human in a universe that needed protecting.